Movie Insight Recapped. Here today we will talk about a horror movie titled Child's Play. Be aware, there are spoilers. In the opening scene of the movie, we find ourselves on the dark, dank streets of Chicago's South Side. Detective Mike Norris is on the trail of a serial killer, Charles Lee Ray, who he calls the Strangler. The two of them soon engage in a gunfight as Norris strikes his target in the leg. Lee Ray tries at the lock, making his way inside. Norris follows him cautiously, careful not to break his cover. Inside the store, more shots are fired, and the police officer fatally wounds his target. Aware that he is about to die, Charles begins speaking in tongues. He grabs a nearby good guy doll, aiming to transfer his life into the toy, continuing a Haitian chant. The sky breaks out into a thunderous storm, then a huge bolt of lightning smashes through the roof of the shop. It creates an explosion that devastates the building, sending the cop flying across the room. Picking himself up, he stumbles over to see the corpse of the Strangler and the doll lying next to him. In the next scene, we observe 6-year-old Andy making a messy breakfast for his mother, Karen Barkley, as he prepares breakfast. The TV is on in the background. While he is waiting for the toast, Andy catches sight of an advertisement for a good guy doll and is enamored by it. He then continues finishing the meal, carrying it on a tray to his mother's bedside. As she awakens, we learn that it is Andy's birthday. She celebrates the occasion by giving him hugs and kisses. Soon Andy begins to unwrap his gifts. The first he opens is the biggest box, but is disappointed to find ill-fitting clothes inside. Next, he opens a smaller package containing a set of toy tools, including a saw and a hammer. He then begs his mother for a good guy doll, and she seems to give in to his desire. Later in the day, Karen is at work in a department store. She begins talking to her best friend Maggie about the good guy doll that Andy is asking for, even though they should stay at work. Maggie persuades Karen to go and make the purchase from the peddler. Outside, the two ladies haggle with the homeless man selling toys. He initially asks for $50, but they negotiate for $30. Maggie feels slighted with the price. She then asks if the doll is stolen, but the unfriendly man responds with aggression. They then walk away with their new purchase. Upon returning to the store, Karen's boss is sitting there waiting. He is angry that she left her position as it wasn't her break time. He then forces her into covering a shift later that evening, threatening her with being fired if she refuses. Karen is reluctant because it is her son's birthday, but Maggie then offers to babysit during a break between her shifts. Karen returns home with the doll, giving it to Andy. He is delighted with the present and begins to play with it. He introduces himself to the doll, and it responds. The doll's name is Chucky. The two continue to play late into the evening under Maggie's watchful eye. Chucky seems distracted by the 9 o'clock news, which Andy takes notice of. As Andy is told to get ready for bed, he tells Maggie that Chucky wants to watch the news. She turns the TV off, taking the two of them to Andy's room. As Andy is brushing his teeth, Maggie suddenly hears the TV has been turned back on. She enters the living room, finding Chucky seated watching the news. She returns Chucky to Andy's room and scolds Andy for not listening to her. Andy denies any wrongdoing. With Andy tucked in bed, Maggie continues tidying up around the apartment. She soon becomes disconcerted by strange noises she hears around the house. When Karen calls asking about their evening, Maggie expresses her concerns over the noises she's been hearing. When she returns to the kitchen, she finds that flour has been poured onto the floor. As she begins sweeping up the flour, she hears a noise behind a plant. She steps over to investigate, but turns around abruptly when she feels a presence behind her. She is struck on the forehead with a toy hammer, causing her to fall backwards through a window. Maggie plummets to her death, coming to a rest on a vehicle below. When Karen gets home, she sees that her building has been cordoned off and emergency response teams are on the scene. She pushes through the cordon and rushes to her apartment. She enters in a panic, looking everywhere for Andy. Fortunately, she finds that he is safe, but she quickly learns about Maggie's fate. Detective Norris and his partner Jack interview the two of them. Norris quickly suspects Andy of involvement as the shoes he is wearing match those of the footprints found at the scene. As they are leaving, Andy notices flour on the soles of Chucky's shoes, which are the same as his. Andy runs out, telling his mother as well as the detectives that Chucky did it, but they don't believe him. 1 ounce. Back in Andy's room, Andy tells his mom that Chucky has been talking to him. Chucky has told him that his real name is Charles Lee Ray and that Maggie deserved what happened to her. Karen is shocked by this and is clearly upset with this story. Realizing his mother isn't having it, Andy apologizes, telling her that he won't make up any further stories. Karen invites Andy to sleep with her, but he declines, telling her that he has Chucky. The next morning, Karen drops Andy at school, who is continuously clutching onto Chucky as she departs. Andy exits the school building. He then heads for the metro station, catching a train. As the train moves along, Chucky is whispering something to Andy. The two of them get off in a rundown part of town and begin walking towards a derelict building. Andy stops to pee near some rubbish, placing Chucky on a rocking chair. While Andy's back is turned, Chucky makes a run for it. He enters the kitchen of a house, where he then turns on the gas. Upstairs, Eddie Caputo is awakened by a noise and goes downstairs to investigate. As he does, he sees Andy walk past, calling for Chucky, clearly feeling threatened. Eddie begins firing his gun to scare off the intruder. He does so again in the kitchen, but this causes the gas to explode. The house then blows up and collapses with Eddie still inside. Chucky has killed once again, believing Andy is responsible. The police take him to the station to interrogate him. The interview is observed by Dr. Ardmore. He quickly asserts that Andy is suffering from some form of mental issue. He exclaims that Andy be admitted to a psychiatric hospital for observation. Back at home, Karen picks up the good guy doll case as a pair of batteries fall out. Concerned by this discovery, she picks up Chucky, opening his back, then discovers that he has been moving and responding without a source of power. Chucky reacts to this, breaking her clasp on him. He then begins to verbally attack her. During the altercation, he bites her arm, leaving a clear, open wound. She flees in a taxi to find Mike Norris, but he is dismissive of her story. She then decides to go and confront the peddler. Against the policeman's advice, the peddler refuses to talk to her and instead assaults her. Norris, who has followed her, interjects. During the conversation that follows, he tells Karen a story about the toy shop and how he had killed Charles Lee Ray inside of it. The detective's first encounter with Chucky occurs in his car. After dropping Karen off at home, Chucky appears out of nowhere and attempts to strangle Norris. Norris is able to free himself, using the car's cigarette lighter to burn Chucky on his temple. Unscathed, Chucky then attempts stabbing Norris through his seat, but is again unsuccessful. Finally, Chucky climbs into the footwell, pushing the John Bishop. We then learn that Charles Lee Ray had also learned how to use black magic from the Bishop using a voodoo doll. He breaks Bishop's leg and his arm, leaving him writhing in agony. Though initially reluctant to help, the pain leads Bishop to reveal that Lee Ray can become a human. He can only do this if he occupies the body of the person in which he first revealed himself to. Chucky kills Bishop and heads off in search of Andy from his cell. Andy sees Chucky climbing some steps outside. He yells for the doctor's assistance, begging him for help. His cries go unheard. Chucky steals the keys and enters the cell. Andy then manages to escape, trying to hide in an operation room, but Chucky finds him. Hearing a disturbance, the doctor goes to investigate. He is stabbed in the leg by Chucky and then electrocuted, becoming Chucky's next victim. Knowing that he will be suspected of the killing, Andy escapes. He returns home and tries to barricade himself inside. Chucky is then able to get in using the chimney. Armed with a knife, the doll begins to hunt Andy down. Quickly overpowering him, he begins performing another voodoo ritual to take over Andy's body, but Mike and Karen arrive in the nick of time. They manage to intervene. When Norris is stabbed in the leg, a battle ensues around the apartment, and luckily Karen is able to protect Andy from any assault. Eventually she manages to trap Chucky in the fireplace. Andy helps her to set him alight, telling Chucky that playtime is over. Chucky, covered in flames, stumbles out and collapses in a heap of burnt ashes. The mother and son hug one another, then tend to Norris's injuries. Chucky, however, is not yet done. He springs back to life, tracking them while carrying his knife. Karen manages to shoot him, taking off his head, arm and leg, incapacitating the doll. At this point, Jack arrives, refusing to believe that a toy could have done this. Against Norris's advice, he picks up Chucky's head and begins playing with it. As he does so, he is grabbed by Chucky's one remaining arm. At this time, Norris is able to shoot Chucky through the heart. This is the only way that he could be killed, according to Dr. Bishop. With Chucky's blood splattered across the wall, the others rush Norris to the hospital. As they are leaving, Jack jokingly mentions that no one is going to believe him. Andy, meanwhile, peers suspiciously through a doorway at the remains of his good guy buddy. Like and subscribe to watch more videos like this, and don't forget to turn on your notifications. Thanks for watching.